Oh, sorry. What's up, guys? Welcome to Nerds and Heresy. Our guest tonight, welcome back, who is an expert in Second Temple Judaism and a scholar of the Dead Sea. I'm going to start that all over. Just welcome back to Nerds and Heresy. Our guest tonight is Dead Sea Scroll scholar and expert in Second Temple Judaism, Dr. Kipp Davis. Please welcome Dr. Kipp. That went really terrible. I'm just going to play the intro.
Hold on to your butts.
Fucking professionalism. Excellent.
That was perfect, man. It was absolutely perfect. So good.
I could not get.
That was awesome.
It was a really simple introduction, and I just my tongue just couldn't do the things it was supposed to do.
Oh wow,
it's a common problem.
We have those moments when the tongue doesn't connect to the brain. So
right,
yeah. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So, yeah, I've been having Nerds and Heresy withdrawal. So, it's a good thing I'm back.
It's good to hear. You've been making the rounds lately. You've been on a lot of shows this past couple months. Seems like.
Yeah, I have this terrible habit for never being able to say no to people. And there's just been a lot lately. I don't know. So and it's still like the rest of February and into March. It's still a really busy month. So yeah.
Well, in that case, I'm very grateful that you've also agreed to come on here.
Well, I think I've said this more than once, but I love your show. Your show is fun. And maybe part of the reason why I love your show is because with the with the intro, your show intros all the time, it makes me feel a little bit at home.
Intro.
It's good, right? It's a good intro. Right. So yeah, it melts your face a little bit. That's how you want it.
Get you hyped up. It seems like every guest I've had on, that's one of the first things they talk about is like, wow, that really got the blood flowing. Like that's the goal.
Yeah, right. No, that's what you do. That's the way to do it.
So real quick before we get into the topic, let's say hi to everybody in the chat because I'm bad at that, and I'm trying to get bad at it. Metal Theologian, Tanis, Dustin, good to see you, man. Dustin's been killing it on his channel lately, getting some really big creators
nice.
Doing D&D games. It's been, I haven't been able to interact with him as much as I wanted to because they always happen late at night, and I usually die at that time. But like, he's gotten some of my favorite like creators on TikTok together to play D&D. That's awesome.
Lady Wasser's here. That's good to see you. She is one of my patrons.
Oh yeah.
So Timothy's music. Yeah.
Timothy, as always. Riley, yep. I'll see you in Philly here in about 4 weeks. And a Woken one. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
And Riley 02192012 is another one of my patrons. So it's very nice. The not that one. The next one. Riley 0219.
Oh, I didn't scroll down far enough.
There you go. So
hey.
It's Tammy Casanova. So
all right. Oh.
Awesome, guys.
I thought that was my mom for a second. That name is very similar to my mother's name. Unless you are my mom. You're my mom. Blink twice if you're my mom. Anyway.
My mom stopped watching my stuff a long time ago. So
really?
Yeah.
My mom doesn't ever watch any of my stuff, but she comments on like everything I post. Like I'll post a joke on Facebook and she'll be like, "Oh, you're
Oh,
so
okay.
funny." I'm like, "Mom, stop. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends. Stop it." I'm
And
almost 40.
my
I'm like,
dad,
"Mom."
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say my dad has complained to me that he can't ever get through anything that I do because it's just too damn long. I
Well,
why can't you do it in 10 minutes?
that's kind of the nature of it, though. These long interviews, they're not for the faint of heart. You have to be
They're not.
diehard fans
And
uh,
like
to.
guys, tonight, this is
Oh,
we're digging into the
we're gonna
weeds
we're gonna get
tonight.
into it.
This is going to
So,
be I noticed, Metal Theologian, you said that you were gonna listen. I encourage everyone. This is going to be a very visual presentation. So if you can watch, I encourage you please to watch. If you've got a great big ass screen to watch on, that's probably for the best. And
or
that's
if you
not
just have a big
because,
ass,
or
watch
if you
watch for
what?
that reason too.
I missed it.
Nothing. You said
Oh,
if you
okay.
have a big ass
Oh, just
screen,
a
I was
big
just like,
ass.
or if you just
Yeah,
have a big ass, like watch for that reason too.
that's right. That's right.
Or if
You
you have a
earned that
little
big
ass, a
ass.
medium
Use
sized
it.
ass. If you have an ass at all, use it to sit down and watch this because there's going to be some good things happening tonight.
God gave you that big ass,
Oh my.
right? What a
So,
stellar
with
start.
that being said, right? So, we wanted to start this conversation talking about paleography. I mentioned this on a TikTok I made advertising the show earlier that TikTok paleography is a field of study that um gets like no coverage. Like it's one of the most interesting studies or fields of study for me that gets the least amount of coverage. Like it's so fascinating, but nobody like talks about it.
It's because it's
Uh,
hard, man.
yeah, and it doesn't make like a big splash, but like the effort that paleographers put into their work is like
Yeah.
they do so much for such little data, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. No.
so what? So
The
Dr. K,
payoff is,
yeah, what can you
yes.
tell us about paleography? What exactly is it?
So, paleography, most simply, is the study of scripts, ancient scripts, mostly in an effort to date manuscripts. Now, long before the printing press was invented, everything was copied by hand, and people who pay close attention to manuscripts recognized over some time that universally, in pretty much any culture where there is formalized handwriting, formalized scribal practices, that script styles will evolve and change over time. So you can track these changes in patterns. It's like a slow sort of evolution of script style, and you can then use, if you've got enough dated material, so letters with like dates on them, or inscriptions with dates on them, or um, uh, inscriptions and textual artifacts that you can locate physically, in an archaeological dig or something like that. Then, in theory, you should be able to assign these scripts to actual periods of time. So, in the in the small space, paleography is just basically the analysis of formal scripts in an effort to date manuscripts. I have some expanded, and that's what I thought I would focus on a little bit for today. Is I have
Sure.
some expanded usages for just analyzing scripts, which go beyond just dating manuscripts. You can do other stuff
Yeah.
with paleography as well. So, I mean, one of the things that, and I'll just talk about this briefly to start. One of the things that I've started doing in my own professional work, and this is building on a lot of the stuff that has been written most recently by a little bit by Ada Yardeni before she passed away, great Jewish paleographer, but in particular, Michael O. Wise did a second PhD uh in it was at an ancient Near Eastern studies department, I think, at University of Chicago. But his dissertation, the topic of his dissertation was basically dating the or um developing ideas about literacy on the basis of the discoveries in the Bar Kokhba caves at Nachal Hever. So he basically took all the documentary evidence and used that to make to narrow our knowledge, or I guess to what's the word I'm looking for? To refine. That's the one. To refine our understanding and our knowledge of literacy rates in Roman Palestine,
Oh,
right? So, and it's the work is excellent. The dissertation was published by Yale in their resource series. It's a pretty expensive book, but and it's an enormous thick book. If you can get it, it's worth your while. Michael Wise is an excellent writer. He's very, very engaging. So even though it's pretty technical, it's a good
Mike
read.
Wise is. I can
Yeah,
attest to that. I haven't
yeah.
read everything
So
of his.
you've read some of his stuff.
A little bit, yeah. It's very.
Yeah.
Oof.
So very good writer. Really bright guy. But what I mean, one of the things that he really discovered through his work helped to really affirm a lot of the earlier work, in particular by Catherine Hedger, about literacy rates in
Ooh,
Roman
Catherine
Palestine.
Hedger. Really?
Extremely, yeah. So,
Ooh.
uh, she wrote this standard work basically back in 2005. I would say it's still the standard work, and Mike Wise's contribution has really just served to reinforce her conclusions about literacy rates. But one of the really valuable things that Mike Wise did in his work was he took all the Bar Kokhba material, all the documents and the texts, and he also analyzed them in terms of script types and developed or furthered ideas that we already had about handwriting, where you can set individual scripts into categories which also tell us something about the people who wrote them. So a manuscript like like the one that we're going to look at in some detail today, Forky Jeremiah A,
Mhm.
was written
Excited to get into that.
formally. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute or two here. So, but this was written professionally. It was written by a professional scribe. So somebody who has exceptionally high scribal training in terms of being able to clearly make the letters and make them legible. The For a long time it was just assumed that the better the better a scribe you were, the more adept you were at reading as well. Um,
Mhm.
we've come to discover this is not necessarily the case. In fact, we have um, records and documents reporting on scribes who can barely read at all, and
Yeah.
for performing their craft, right? All they need to know is how to write script, recognize the letters,
Yeah.
be able
There-
and
There's a
even
huge
just
difference. For those who don't know, there's a huge difference between people who are literate and scribes in the ancient world. Like scribes underwent like meticulous training to be able to do what they could do. Uh, but sometimes people who were just literate, like slaves, for example, were
Yeah.
purchased just because they were able to read and write. So what they copied doesn't look at all the same as like what professional scribes copied. And you can see this most clearly when Constantine conquered Rome in the 3rd century, and he commissioned professional scribes to make was like 50 copies of several different books. So like prior to the 3rd century, you can see all the manuscripts that we have, and they're kind of all over the place. They're much harder to read, much harder to translate.
Mm-hmm.
But after Constantine commissioned those scribes, then it becomes much easier and much more consistent. So yeah, there's a huge difference, and you can see that very clearly. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, no.
keep going.
That's good though. That's to provide some clarification here. And you're totally on you're picking up what I'm putting down here. So, one of the things that Mike Wise also I think made an important contribution to was evaluating a lot of the Qumran manuscripts in particular according to these models. One of the things that we see are not so we have quite a few. I mean the collection is huge, so we have quite a bit of everything.
Oh, yeah.
But we do have we have quite a few of these formally written, exquisitely prepared manuscripts that were commissioned and written out by professional scribes. But maybe most of the collection is comprised of manuscripts that the handwriting is really fluid, and you can tell that it's quick. It has a lot of more cursive tendencies. Just to give you an idea of what I'm getting at here, this is the difference between printing and handwriting, right? You learned if you're old enough, like I am, and you did penmanship in school, you learned your block letters first, right? Printing, and then uh, after figuring that out, you learned cursive, your handwriting. Well, we have the same thing in Hebrew as well. There
Hold
are
on,
cursive.
hold on real quick.
He-
Real quick, Kip. Oh, you mean this book right here, Riley? Is this the one you're talking about? Sorry, just
Show off.
had to plug
Just
that.
showing off, right?
Oh, it's so good, you guys. It's so good. Anyway, just had to do that.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
So there we have examples from not just the scrolls, but from around from the manuscript finds all over the Judean desert of cursive scripts. So these are the kinds of scripts that appear in letters mostly and in documents. One of the things that we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is particularly specialized, are these scripts that look almost like a mix between a formal and a cursive script. They're really fluid. They're well written, but you can tell it's someone who's writing quickly and adept at doing this, but also is not writing formally in the sense of copying out a manuscript like a professionally commissioned scribe would. So I've gotten into the habit of calling these figures scribblers. These are basically high-level scholars. Yeah, scribblers as opposed to scribes. So these aren't people who write for who scribe for a living. They don't
Like they're
write.
like they're good at what they do, but they're not like working towards a certain standard necessarily.
They're not professionally producing manuscripts for people. Is what they're not
Gotcha.
doing. They're scholars who are taking notes and writing out stuff for themselves. And you can get a sense of this based on the quality of the writing and the style of the writing in many respects. Now, so that's just by way of introduction to just some of the various things that I'm looking for as someone who's
That's one of the
doing paleography.
that was one of the or not criticisms, like suggestions about the recent document that came out. P was it 5575?
5575
57, yeah.
is
Some people
the
have said
handwriting.
like, yeah, they were like it could just be like someone's personal notes. Like it may not be the earliest
Very
manuscript. It could
possibly.
just be like it could just be someone's like own personal notes that they're writing for
Yeah.
themselves and nobody else, based on the handwriting. And that's what paleography does. Is that's what it tells you, or one of the things it does anyway.
It's one
Is
of
it
the
tells
things.
you
Yep.
why these things were written down, who they were written for.
And yeah, Jason Rollins here in the chat is on the right track. He's also another one of my patrons. There's a difference between taking notes and copying scriptures as far as quality goes.
Right.
Now,
Exactly.
you should. I mean, I hope you can appreciate this without even recognizing the difference between these scripts. I think you can conceptualize that this is not a hard and fast thing, right? There is some. So there is some what's the word I'm looking for? There's some ambiguity here. Some of this we are sort of we're guessing out a lot of this as well, but based on the types of things that we see in the scrolls, this is a model that seems to fit, where certain manuscripts were produced formally by professional scribes, probably for the community at large to be used, publicly. Other manuscripts were produced privately, individually, and many of these contain, elements of scholarship. Now we don't necessarily, and this is where some of the difficulty comes in. I would have shown. So there's one set of manuscripts. Maybe I'll just do this to start. I'm going to go and pull up a couple of manuscripts from the collection just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here. I'm on Chrome, so just a sec. Leon. I'm going to go to the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls library.
The thing about paleography. There we go. Gotcha.
Okay.
While you're doing that, the thing that's crazy about paleography is these are people that study what the material is that the scripts are being written on, what's being used to write down. Is it a quill? Is it a needle of some kind? What kind of ink is being used? What are the ingredients in those inks? Is that ink thicker? Is it thinner? How does that ink react when it touches what type of paper? Like that, all that matters. So like if you're using a thin type of ink in papyrus and you write down like an aleph, that the ink might bleed out more than normal. So it might look like an entirely different letter, especially when it comes to how small those people are writing 3,000 years ago. That's what paleographers do, is they try and figure this stuff out. What were these original scribes trying to write? And most of the time, from what I understand, it's not that hard to figure out, but sometimes every now and then you come up with some issues that you're like, what were they trying to write down here? You're not quite sure. And so they have to do like this hyper analysis of like the ink and the paper and the quill that
can you pull up my screen? All right. So here,
Please shut me up.
now I'm going to show you two manuscripts. These are both manuscripts that I was actually commissioned by the editor to do the paleography for. So the cool thing here is that these are copies of the same text. It's called Songs of the Maskil, or Songs of the Sage. Now, this first one
This is really
is
neat. Clean writing, it looks like.
yeah, exactly. So this is what I would classify as quite a formal script, very
Yeah.
professional. This is a
They knew
very
what they were doing.
highly trained scribe. Yes. Um, and it is a beautiful script too. One of the other things about this manuscript that let me see,
It
you'll
is.
notice up in the top left hand corner here how the writing's quite clean on the surface, but then as you get further down to this part here,
Oh yeah, look at
you
that.
can see how it breaks up quite a bit. So, like right away, this is telling me too that there's, the surface of this manuscript, and you can even see the striations, lots of these lines that are going
Can you go?
across,
Can you
right?
go down like a little bit more to the
All
like?
the
Yeah,
way.
like it looks
So,
so faded there.
yeah, this one is worn quite a bit. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of the skin in preparation. But anyways, I pull this up just to show you this high quality script of a professional scribe. Now I'm just gonna pull up the next manuscript, which is this next one is if I remember correctly, I think I dated this one um, a little bit later, but,
Uh,
so if you
Jason, I'm
can
pretty sure
pull
that
this
was
one up.
leather, right?
It's all leather.
That was
Yes.
animal skin, right? Yeah, that was not
Yes.
papyrus. You could,
Nope,
if you
not
look close, you could see
papyrus.
like the pores. Okay.
Exactly, the
This
hair
is, oh wow.
follicles. So this
Yeah.
is the exact same like the exact same text on a different document. The hand is a little bit later, but the other thing you'll notice too is it doesn't have the
This is the
same
same
level
text,
of scribal. It's the same text. So it doesn't
but
have the
it's
same
later.
level of a little bit later. Yeah. Um, doesn't have the same
Sorry.
level of scribal precision. However, what I see when I'm looking at this is a high level of what I call fluidity. So this is somebody who is writing fairly quickly and easily.
Yeah, like
Um,
it's not terrible.
no, but it's not professional. Like it's not professionally prepared. So this would be an example of a scribbler, someone who is proficient in writing and reading certainly, and is doing a lot of this either just copying directly quickly from another manuscript, or maybe even pulling this um, off the top of his head in many respects. So this is kind of a visual example of some of the differences and some of the things that I'm looking at as a paleographer. When it comes to dating the actual script itself, I'm also looking at individual features on the letters. You read Hebrew from right to left, so I'm looking. One of the first things that I'm looking for is whether the letters are standing more or less straight, erect, or if they're leaning forward or leaning to the left in this case. Uh, these
Oh,
are fairly erect, leaning slightly forward. As scripts evolved through the Roman period, they started to settle into this stronger forward lean. The other thing that happened
really?
with letters is they became more uniform in size. we're going to look at after we're finished with this, and when we get into 4Q Jeremiah A, we're going to get into a very, very old manuscript. And one of the things I'm going to point out there is the dramatic variation in letter height. On something like this, you'll notice that the letters themselves are all fairly uniform in size. So, and then I will look at the placement of individual, what we call karaya. You can see my cursor, which is good. So you'll notice these are ornamentations, right, on the shoulder of this dalet, or over here on the head of the dalet. One of the things that I'm looking for is on this aleph. This particular arm on the left here is connecting a little bit further down from the top here. This is a feature that over time, olives originally were written almost like a letter X, but then those two arms started to separate, and over time distanced completely from one another, to the point where in some of the later manuscripts, this arm is written with one single motion to the stroke coming down.
Yeah,
so on this one, it's not quite like on some of them. They're literally just right. Like there's no distinction here. It just comes straight up and then straight down. So these are just some of the things that I tend to be looking for. This here is a letter mem. The separation between this top line and this bottom line tells me a lot about round about the period of when this manuscript was written. Down here, this one in particular is a fairly rare letter. This is a Samic, and it changes quite dramatically over time. And I'll point another one out, and it literally looks actually more like this mem here than it does this here.
Real quick, before we go
Mm-hmm.
on, we got a good question from Holly. Do scribes tend to have a lighter hand using less ink, regardless of the time period?
I
think that's a good question. Like, can you tell, like, when they were pressing down harder?
Those are usually, in my opinion, those are usually signs of levels of relative skill. So one of the things that we see happening. Hey, Nitty's here. That's nice. One of the things that we tend to see, in particular with the Qumran manuscripts, is individual, like the strokes themselves, also tend to tighten up in terms of uniformity of their thickness. On some of the older formal manuscripts, some of the strokes are quite thick, next to ones that are quite thin. So, it's the difference between using like a beveled reed that's been cut a certain way, so that like a calligraphy pen, right? They started to prefer these ones that came down to a sharper point over time. So the strokes themselves weren't the differences between the in thickness on the individual strokes.
And you can tell that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
so.
Anyway.
But you have to spend a lot of time looking at this kind of stuff. But what I wanted to do today, when I was thinking through how to talk about paleography, and just some of the ways in which we can use paleography in evaluating manuscripts, or particularly fragmentary manuscripts. And this is because one of the things you asked me about was what did you say? Textual anomalies. And some of the ways in which paleography helps us to see through those, or reveal and uncover those. So the manuscript, it's one of my favorites for a couple of reasons. I was introduced, and I'll just pull it up here. Actually, before I do,
Before we
I'll
get into
just
the
I'll just
manuscript
mention.
itself, can you
Yeah,
talk a
yeah.
little bit about what textual anomalies are, like from a
So
paleographic perspective? What exactly does that term mean?
it could mean all sorts of different things. When I'm using it, usually this has to do with insertions and deletions or corrections. So places where a scribe has made a mistake and has been corrected either by himself or by a later scribe, or places where a scribe has just straight up either eliminated text for whatever reason or added text for whatever reason. So that's how I'm using the term, and analyzing
Could
the
this also
script.
apply to when people? Uh, sorry. Could this also apply to when like certain papyrus or um, animal hide was reused? Because that happened too, right?
So
Like
but
sometimes,
that's not, so that is not something that I
or that's
tend
something
to
different.
deal with. What you're
Okay,
talking about
okay.
are palimpsests, which were
Yes. Oh God, I
much
remember
more
that term.
common in later periods. And basically, what this is a because the material is not readily available. It's very expensive. You can't just go out and buy paper. You need to be rich in order to acquire it or make it yourself. And because of this, particularly during the Christian, we see this quite a bit with Christian manuscripts, where an older text is literally just scraped off, and then the
Yeah.
same sheet is used to write something new. And scholars, usually using special technology, are able to actually pull out the text that was originally inscribed. We see some pretty cool things, in particular using different wavelengths of light, and that sort of thing. That's
Nuts.
not something we see very much of at all
Yeah. It didn't mean to like throw you off
in the
your.
scrolls. No, that's
Yeah.
cool. It's is an excellent question, and you're absolutely, one of the things that's really remarkable about this, and something that we see quite a bit, is um uh Christian scribes, in particular in the late Roman and in the medieval period, would like just scrape off works by Greek classics,
That's
and
nuts.
use the material to write on, um, yeah, to write the New Testament or this church father, or that. So the
Yeah.
remarkable thing here is that, I think it's sort of it's sort of a way of understanding how some of this stuff gets lost. Yes, palimpsest is hard to say. Almost as hard as
Palimpsest.
paleographer.
Yeah. Right.
So, um,
Or adhesive.
so or adhesive or
Never
onomasticon,
mind.
but
Ooh.
so, but so
Anyway.
that's not a lot of that's
Yeah.
not a lot of the stuff that the Judean manuscripts didn't tend to be scraped off and reused, as far as we can see. I think there's maybe
Really. I
only 2 or 3
guess that makes
at
sense.
Qumran.
Actually, thinking about it.
So I think, and I think part of it is because it's all Jewish literature, right? So, for that reason, it was all deemed pretty important to the people who were collecting
Like
it. So,
sacred, right?
yeah,
And they took
whereas
their
like a
documents
lot of the
and hid them, right?
yeah, a lot of the palimpsests that you find are of the nature that I said, where Christians would erase quote unquote pagan texts, right, in order to copy on
Yeah.
their own sacred text. So that you don't encounter, the mindset's quite different with the Jewish
Yeah.
material. So I
God, that's
suspect
so.
that's probably why. But what we are going to see is some pretty cool stuff. And basically what I'm going to talk a lot about tonight are the ways in which the paleographic work that I've done has helped to reveal all sorts of interesting information about the scribal practices taking place within this particular manuscript. Oh, look,
Hey,
Vishanti
Vishanti.
finally made it. So,
Finally.
um,
Oh, we've been waiting for you.
mhm. Now we can start. So,
Now we're
um, I've done quite a bit of work on this manuscript called 4Q Jeremiah A, 4Q 70. One of my original fascinations with this manuscript was because it is one of the oldest of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It dates to probably sometime between 225 to 175 BCE. So this is a pre-Hasmonean manuscript,
Ooh,
originally copied prior to the Seleucid, uh, the Seleucid crisis, the Antiochian crisis in Jerusalem, which is
yeah.
pretty wild, right?
That's
But
yeah.
now the work I've published a little bit on this, and what I'm going to be talking about tonight is actually drawing from two essays that I've written. The first is in this book called The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Studies of the Humanities. So these are collected essays from the International Organization for Qumran Studies meeting in Munich from 2013. And I gave a paper and wrote an article for this book called The Social Milieu of 4Q Jeremiah A in a Second Temple Jewish Manuscript Culture, Fragments,
Can someone in the
Manuscripts,
chat find a
Variants,
link to that
and
and
Meaning.
post it?
To this book. It's a Braille book, I warn you. So it is probably completely unaffordable. But if you can find a
Okay.
free copy, have at it, right? And the other one was from a conference at 2014, a conference that my good friend Dr. Matthew Monger helped to organize, called The Bible as Notepad. And
Familiar.
the subtitle is Tracing Annotations and Annotation Practices in Late Antique and Medieval Biblical Manuscripts. And I delivered a paper called Margins as Media, the Long Insertion in 4Q Jeremiah A. And that brings me to the other fascination that I have always had with this manuscript. And at this point, I'm going to share my entire screen and bring up my presentation. So if you can pull that up, please, Ricky.
Here we go.
So
We're getting into it now.
the fascination here is this particular fragment from
Oh, that's
the
really cool.
4Q70, 4Q Jeremiah A. Now, why is this such an interesting fragment? Well, something that I think
Think of the
everybody
cover.
should be able to see is there's a whole lot going on here. You have parts of two columns of text and a margin in between them. However, you also have smaller script filling the margin and written up and down, as opposed to horizontally. The text has been written vertically. So this is the long insertion of 4Q Jeremiah A. Can you see it? Can you see where the text is written vertically there? Can you
Oh
see
yeah,
my
yeah.
cursor? So you'll notice
For some reason I thought
these.
I thought a portion of it was written upside down, but no, I'm just crazy.
Well, we'll get there. A portion of it is written upside down.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh,
So
I'm so excited.
I just if you can you can see my cursor. So these
Yeah,
larger letters here. This is the main part of the text, right? And this is a column break. So there's two columns here. This is the end.
I don't even know Hebrew.
Uh,
I noticed that.
right. So this is the end, the left edge of a column, and then over here on the further left side is the beginning of a new column. And in between, you have these smaller Hebrew characters where it's a whole bunch of text that's just been added in, filling in the margin, and it continues down. So we know what all this text is, and we're going to get into it because it's super interesting. This is drawn from this is drawn from a couple of presentations that I've given. Hey, way to go! I was giving out Fs all day the other day, but you get an A, Ricky.
Oh,
Okay, so here I've got this
Wow.
visual presentation here. You can see the long insertion, the new text. We recognize it because the writing is quite a bit smaller, and it appears in a paragraph break, and it goes in this direction. You got 3 lines, fairly neatly written in this smaller script, going horizontally, but then they shift into these 4 lines going vertically down in the margin between the 2 columns. And this is my reconstruction of what's here. Now, Ricky, I had asked you when we talked a little bit earlier today if you could be prepared to read some text. This is important. So the text that's preserved here comes from Jeremiah chapter 7 and chapter 8. So the stuff that I've reconstructed right beside the horizontal red arrow there, that's Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 729. I got to pull my notes up here now. Sorry. So if you could read, and I don't care what translation you use, just pull up Jeremiah chapter 7 and read verse 29 for me.
All right. This is from the New American Standard Version. Cut off, and this is a quote from cut off your hair and cast it away, and take up a lamentation on the bare heights. For the Lord has rejected and forsaken the generation of his wrath. Is that right?
Okay. Now, that's right. So that's what's there that I've reconstructed in the horizontal text right beside the red arrow. And now this is what I've reconstructed in the following line. There's a paragraph break here. And we know this based on how we reconstruct everything to the left of that. Now, if you can just jump down to chapter 8, verse 4, and read 8 verse 4 through let's go to verse 6 or 7. Yeah.
And the good book did say, you shall say to them, thus says the Lord, do men fall and not get up again? Does one turn away and not repent? Why then has this people, Jerusalem, turned away in continual apostasy? They hold fast to deceit. They refuse to return. I have listened and heard. They have spoken what is not right. No man repented of his wickedness, saying, what have I done? Everyone turned to his course like a horse charging into battle. That's the 6.
Good. Yep. That's good. That's yeah. That's good there. So, this is what was originally written on this scroll. The scribe who first wrote this scroll out copied Jeremiah chapter 7:29, ended his paragraph, began a new line with Jeremiah chapter 8 verse 4, and all of chapter 7 verse 30 through to the end of chapter 8 verse 3 was originally missing in this manuscript, which I think is pretty remarkable.
What?
So
That's
wow. Yes. Now that
crazy.
brings us to what I call the long insertion. Jeremiah. So yeah, there we have the text jumps from the end of I said Jeremiah 7:28. It's actually 7:29. Jumps from the end of 7:29 straight over to chapter 8 verse 4. And the remarkable thing that you notice, you can see this particularly if you know Hebrew, is that there is a shift in there's a shift in the actual style that occurs between chapter 728 and 729. And the text becomes what I've described a much more Deuteronomistic sort of oracle. It's basically a new oracle from 729 all the way through to 8.3. And it follows a more prosaic format as opposed to a poetical format. And it's kind of slotted right in there between these two poetical sections, the first ending in 729 and then the next one beginning at chapter 8 verse 4. So now scholars had noticed this for some time and said this almost looks like it was inserted at a later point in time. And here we actually have a manuscript where the text jumps from chapter 7 verse 29 to chapter 8 verse 4 and continues, and chapter 730 through 8.3 is completely missing, but then was added into the available space, which in this case happens to be a paragraph break up at the top where the scribe inserted 3 lines, and then in the margin where he continued his text for 4 lines down to the bottom of the manuscript. And then, and I'll show you this in a minute here, he finished in the very bottom of the manuscript upside down. So he's doing this. He's like writing now, and when scribes wrote on parchment, they would write on these individual sheets that were already pre-ruled. And then they would, when they were finished with them all, they would stitch them together to create a long scroll. So he's got his sheet, and he's writing this new section in the available space he has. But he's run out of room, so he turns it 90 degrees and continues in the margin in 4 lines. And I'll show you this in a little bit more depth here in a minute. You'll see the lines getting slowly compressed as he's running out of room, right? But then he doesn't have quite enough room to finish it, so he turns it 90 degrees once more and finishes it on the bottom margin upside down. Do you want to see all that?
I would love to see all that.
All right. Well, let's take a look at this.
So real quick, I read while we were talking, I read chapter 7:28 and then skipped to chapter 8 verse 4, and it flows together perfectly.
It does,
like that,
doesn't it?
That section, because
yes,
7:28 starts with "You shall say to them," and then chapter 4 or chapter 8 verse 4 says "You shall say to them" also. So it's a perfect continuation. So you can definitely see how, and there's a similar instance of this in 1 Corinthians chapter 1.
Yes.
But this
is the sort of thing that we've always known about, right? We know about these sorts of we can see them in the text and hypothesize, this looks like this was added later. If you could maybe just, what I've done here, I skipped ahead a little bit. I flipped the manuscript on edge, and now you can see the 4 fragments which we've used to reconstruct this entire column. So that's fragment 4. The big one is fragment 4, column 1, and then there's fragment 5, fragment 6, and the one on the on the what's the bottom? It's flipped on its side right now. So on the left hand bottom corner, this is fragment 7, and you can see where my cursor is. These 3 lines here. This is part of the main column, and these are all written right side up. There's this tiny little line of text that's written upside down in the bottom, and this completes the insertion. So the scribe is writing. I've got some red lines here to show you. He's written 1 line to stretch all the way to the bottom, then followed by another, and then these 2 additional ones for 4 lines. You'll notice something taking place here, though. you can see that the space he's using is getting progressively more compressed as he's encroaching
Yeah,
on this. And, that's because
because he
he's
has to.
running out of space, right? So
Oh,
now, and that's the direction it goes. It continues for 4 lines down to the
gotcha.
bottom of the manuscript, and then upside down in the bottom margin. So let's take a look at oh right, yeah, that's just showing where the all right, let's get back to this. So this is my reconstruction of the insertion, and you can see it here, where you remember there's where my cursor is here, there's a paragraph break. So this new scribe is starting to add text. Now, importantly, and this is where paleography is in the first place quite useful. I'll say 3 things about using paleography in this manuscript. First of all, we can use paleography to test the limits of our reconstruction using careful observations about the script. Secondly, we can see that the large insertion here, this bit that I'm talking about, is probably late on the basis of the script style. And then third, what we'll do in a little bit is we can hypothesize about the size of the column and the scroll on the basis of the script and the reconstruction. So remember I said that this scroll, the main script in the scroll dates to about 225 to 175 BCE.
Right.
So the script in the insertion is, not that old. I've dated it to roughly around 125 BCE. So if you think about it, this is a scroll
Really?
that was kicking around potentially for 100 years
Yeah, and people were
before
just adding.
somebody thought to add.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know, right? So, and we can detect that based on the style of the writing. One of the things that I mentioned, and you if you pay close attention, you might be able to see it. I'm not sure how easily the untrained eye can pick this up, but one of the things that we see is that in these quite a bit older scripts, there's quite a variation in terms of letter height. Lots of the letters will vary in size. They're starting to compress together quite a bit and become more uniform in this smaller script, in this much later script. And then I won't bother taking the time to go through the individual details because these can be hard to pick up. But there's individual clues
Really got me
that
now. Breaking out the glasses.
so there's individual clues that I can see from some of the letters, which suggest to me, yeah, this stems from a later period of time. So this is right away, I think, something that's fascinating about this manuscript is that somebody was using it for 100 years before they ever even missed Jeremiah chapter 7:30 through 8 verse 3. So
Wow.
for 100 years, they were reading this manuscript without that text, and then eventually somebody added it to the
And
manuscript. So
wow, that's fucking crazy, man.
I know, right? Now, maybe before we
Yeah.
continue, do you want to pull up the oracle and actually read it? So starting in 7:30, it should start with something like 4. Let me see, is that? Yeah,
For the sons of
it should
Judah.
read something like. Yeah, that's it. The sons of Judah have been wicked
Let
in my
me.
eyes, an oracle of Yahweh, something like that. So
Let's
just 7:30 through to 8:3, if you can just read it.
I'm gonna try and see if I can. No, I'm not gonna do that right No, I was going to try and pull it up, but
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to read it. So 7:30 through what now?
8:3.
3:3. Okay. For the sons of Judah, so this is the portion that was.
This is the added portion. Yeah.
Yeah. For the sons of Judah have done that which is evil in my sight, declares the Lord. They have set their detestable things in the house which is called by my name. I defile it. They have built their high places of Topeth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters. Ooh, I see where this is going. To burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, and I did not come into my mind. Therefore, therefore, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, which it will no longer be called Topeth, or the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of the slaughter. For they will bury in Topeth, because there is no other place. The dead bodies of the people will be food for the birds of the sky, and therefore the beasts of the earth, and no one will frighten them away. Yeah.
I think there should be one more. For all who remain, those who are left over from this wicked clan. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to wipe. I was wiping my nose.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait.
The dead body.
Yeah, no, keep
I got a few verses left. For
the
dead bodies of the people will be food for the birds in the sky, the beasts of the earth, and no one will frighten them away. But I will make to case for the cities of Judah and for the streets of Jerusalem the voice of joy and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. For the land will become a ruin. At that time, declares the Lord, they will bring out the bones of the king of Judah and the bones of its princes, and the bones of its priests, and the bones of the prophets, and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem from their graves. They will spread them out onto the sun and the moon and to all the hosts of heaven, which they have loved, and which they have served, and which they have gone after, and which they have sought, and which they have worshipped. They will not have gathered or buried. They will be as dung on the face of the ground. And death will be chosen rather than life by all the remnant that remains of this evil family that remains in all the places to which I drive them, declares the Lord of hosts.
That's it.
That was very poignant.
No, I just want to make sure everybody is clear on here. Everything that Ricky read just now was totally new information at the point.
That's like straight propaganda.
It's wild, right? So yeah. Now, and we will get back to this in a little bit. Now, I have called this the Deuteronomistic insertion because when you look at the contents of what's in this oracle, it looks a lot like what's being propagated in the book of Deuteronomy. And it has a slightly different flavor to it than what precedes and what follows it in Jeremiah chapter 7 and chapter 8. So now, one of the other things that this long insertion is useful for, you'll notice that the column's really fragmentary at this point. You can see we don't have a lot left here. One of the things that this long insertion is really useful for is providing some limitations for us on how large the column was and how much we can actually fill in. Thanks so much. This is my good friend Zach Miller. He is a student, a biblical studies student in I think you're in a seminary, aren't you, Zach? I'm not entirely. He told me
your name sounds familiar. I've definitely seen you around.
So he does some really great interviews with all sorts of scholars about biblical studies. Yeah, so it's good stuff. Anyways, I use this long insertion, my reconstruction of it, and this you can only do this if you understand the script styles and how they work and how to assess things. I use that to determine how large the whole column could have been, and I'll show you how I did that now. So here's my reconstruction of the text of the first line on the in the margin, and then I took a measurement of that. And I called that line. So this is line 6 in the manuscript up here. So all the additional stuff is those first 3 lines of the insertion are line 6, A, B, and C. This first one on the vertical is line 6D. I took a measurement of that, and it is 19.4 centimeters between those, that green line that you see there. The measurement is 19.4 centimeters. Now, you'll notice
what manuscript is this again? Like, you said
4Q70 or 4Q Jeremiah A. Now, you'll notice that. Okay, no, that's good. You'll notice that the remaining 3 lines in the margin are all below the 3rd horizontal line. So they all sit underneath line 6C, which is a little bit different from line 6D. Line 6D kind of sits beside line 6C. So right away, I know that these remaining lines are all going to be a little bit shorter. So these ones, I estimate, should measure between 18.5 to 19 centimeters. If the scribe is following convention and ending his line close to where he ended that first line. And when I reconstruct the text, this is what I discover. Looks pretty good. Now, you'll notice there's a couple of discrepancies right away. The third vertical line, line 6F, is 18.8 centimeters. It's right in there, right in the ballpark of my 18.5 to 19 centimeter judgment. Line 6E looks a little bit short. It's either 18.2 centimeters, or if we include a Septuagint variant in there, we can get it up to 18.5 centimeters. So right away, my thought is most likely this includes a Septuagint variant. The Septuagint, by the way, is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, right? Now, this final line, you'll notice, is quite short. The 4th line, the 4th vertical line, is only 18.1 centimeters. And you might be suggesting to me, well, right away, that's outside of your range. So this doesn't seem right. And I will say, not so fast, because do you see that? I'm going to draw a little red circle here. Do you see that red circle on my manuscript?
Yes.
You might have to look really closely, but one of the things that you'll notice is that there's horizontal text from the main body of the text that this 4th line has interfered with, and the scribe has actually had to skip over that. So what I'm suggesting is the reason this line is a little bit shorter is because in this part that's missing here, there's probably another place where he had to skip over a letter that was cutting into his line here, which would then bring the length of this line a little bit further down to our now in an amazing coincidence here. This word here, this expression that has interfered with the scribal insertion, the term here, and I'm not kidding about this, is the lying pen of scribes.
What? No, you're making that up. That's bullshit, Dr. You're fucking with us right now, Dr.
I am not making that up. I am not making that up.
That's crazy.
That is. So if that's almost enough to make you believe in God. So that's it's nuts. Anyways, so that's how I have in my test of my reconstruction. This is how I am relatively satisfied that I'm right about what this potentially looked like originally. And then we follow this up with a line on the very bottom. And that's basically what the long insertion looked like when the scribe wrote it, as near as we can imagine. Okay, now you're asking me, Kipp, how does this help you determine how large the column was? Well, I will show you. So this is the large fragment is fragment 4. Okay, this one here is fragment 5. This little one here is fragment 6. This one is fragment 7. So based on my reconstruction, I have placed fragment 7 where I think it belongs. And now I count, I measure the distance between this bottom line of fragment 7 and what's left of the last line of fragment 4. And I know what the text is here, right? I'm able to reconstruct this based on the text of Jeremiah. So if I take a measurement here, you can see it there. I end up with 11.2 centimeters. And I know by measuring the distance between all the lines that are visible here that my line spacing is 8 millimeters. And this means there is exactly 14 lines of space available to me between there. Now, based on everything else that I know about the fragments that are before and after this one, this would be then line 29 or line 30 of the manuscript. And based on everything else that I know from other fragments of this manuscript, everything was written in either 29 or 30 lines. So I'm feeling pretty good about about my reconstruction here. I'm pretty confident that there were a maximum of 30 lines in this column. Now, there is a
Dr.
problem.
Cheryl.
It's good to see you, Dr. Cheryl. The problem here is that when Emmanuel Tove wrote the edition for this particular manuscript, he reconstructed it in accordance with the text of both the Masoretic text and the Septuagint, which in this space here, if I remember correctly, there's I think only like one textual variation between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. It's really close. So he just followed the Masoretic text in his reconstruction, and he determined, based on his reconstruction, that this particular column probably measured 32 lines. And I'm going, no way. Impossible.
Yeah.
Because we've set some limits on the basis of the long insertion on how much space is available here.
Yeah.
And what this means is I've got a 30-line column, and this 30-line column is not enough space to reconstruct the Masoretic text or the Septuagint. So I don't know what's there, but you know what I am pretty confident in? I'm pretty confident that whatever was there was not identical to the Masoretic text or the Septuagint. Exciting. Isn't this exciting?
I know. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I really am.
All right. I hope everyone's excited.
I might be biased, but I'm with you on this one.
All right. So, so this is the This is the long insertion. This is the really wild thing about this manuscript that attracted my attention. The fact that we have a physical example of a scribal change made to a biblical text, which was probably not native to the original text. And it's a significant difference. It's a significant change. And it's one that was not picked up in our surviving manuscript tradition. We didn't even know, there were speculations about the possibility of this happening with this particular text, but we didn't have proof of it until this manuscript. Yay! So, this is part one. We're going to move on because there's more going on in this manuscript. And we're going to move over now to the next column. You can see here where my cursor is. This is the fragment we were just looking at. You can see the long insertion here in the vertical text in the column. All this new stuff here, these are the fragments of the following column. Okay. So, and this following column, the extant text here is text from Jeremiah chapter 9, verses 11 through 15. So we're going to spend some time talking about some of the things going on in Jeremiah 9, 11 to 15. First of all, I'm going to ask you if you can read. Well, let's read. If you can just read all of chapter 9, verse 11 through to the end of verse 15.
9. I'm trying to. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, should I stop sharing mine, or can you just override mine?
No. You're good. I can move as.
Yeah, perfect.
Needed.
Okay. 9, starting at 11.
Move my little light here. All right.
Through to 15.
To 15?
Yeah.
I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I will make the cities of Judah a desolation without inhabitant. You know what? I'm going to leave that up, but I'm going to read it out of my physical Bible because it's easier for some reason. I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I will make the cities of Judah a desolation without an inhabitation. Without inhabitant. Who is the wise man that may understand this, and who is he whom the mouth of the Lord has spoken, that he may declare it? Why is the land ruined, laid waste like a desert, so that no one passes through? The Lord said, because they have forsaken my law, which I have set before them, and have not obeyed my voice, nor walked according to it. It's still, yeah. Okay. But have walked after the stubbornness of their hearts, and after the bowels. Ooh, after the bowels. This is going. As their fathers taught them. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will feed them, this people, with wormwood, and give them poison water to drink. Is that it?
Is that the end? That's the end of verse 15, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent. So that's the text that we're focused on here. Now, the first, and we see a few different things going on here, and the first change is really subtle, but I think it is not insignificant, and that happens. Well, here is first of all the way that I reconstruct the text to fill in the gaps of this manuscript, and I've put this. Do you see this? I've got a little line,
Yeah.
purple line that I've added here to the left. So this is basically what I've set as probably the limit, the very end of the column. So when I hit that line or go just a little bit beyond it, I know that I'm done. I can't continue to add text into that. Otherwise, it's going to interfere with the next column beyond this. Something else I'm going to point out here, you can see a fairly clean edge on this particular fragment here. The reason for that is that this is, so this is the end of a sheet. You can actually see little divots evenly spaced.
Yeah, like it was stitched together or something?
Exactly. So those are the stitching holes. This is the edge of the sheet. So there was a new sheet that was stitched onto this one. So anyways, this is my you get another A. This is the limit of my reconstruction for a particular line. I can venture a little bit past this line, but not very far. And this will become important as we go through what's happening in this manuscript. All right. So now, one of the things you'll notice is this particular letter. It's a hey. It's the last letter on a line, and it's basically the only one we can see. It's really small. When I look at the lines here, this particular letter measures only 2 millimeters, whereas most letters on in the main hand measure 3 millimeters. And when you're working on this level, that 1 millimeter is a pretty big difference. You can see the difference here between this smaller hay and a normal sized hay. Right away, that's a clue to me that there's something strange going on here. The other thing that I noticed that's quite odd. There you go. You see the little hay here. Notice how much bigger these letters are on the following
Yeah.
line. So I also then measured the space between where this would be. If this is the Hebrew letters hang from the line, they don't sit on the line. So you measure the lines from the top. So what's the distance between this line and the one below it? And I come up with 8.8 millimeters, which is pretty big. You remember I said that the average for the previous column was 8 millimeters. This is
Yeah.
almost a full millimeter bigger, which doesn't seem like a lot, but with this particular column, the ruling is a little bit smaller. It's actually 7.1 millimeters. So this is a pretty significant difference. To my eye, this looks like this text seems like it could have been corrected. I think what's going on here is something like this. I think the text originally looked like that, and it read, "Why is the land ruined like a wilderness?" And then, for whatever reason, the scribe added in this word, just sitting kind of above it like that, to read, "Why is the land ruined, laid waste like a wilderness?" It's a very subtle change, but I think that's probably what's going on here. But this is the.
That makes
Go ahead.
sense. Totally makes sense. I was just
Thank
saying
you.
that makes perfect sense.
All right. So, but there's a lot more happening here, and we're going to move next to chapter 9, verse 14. So, when Emmanuel Tove reconstructed this, here's the line here where verse 14 occurs. When Emmanuel Tove reconstructed this, he did so as he usually does, according to the Masoretic text, which reads, "And Yahweh says, because they have forsaken my law that I set before him, and have not obeyed my voice, or walked in accordance with it, but have stubbornly followed their own hearts, and have gone after." Oh, sorry, no, I skipped one. That was 9:13. We'll get to that in a minute. Sorry, forget all that. So for 9 verse 14, what Tov reconstructed was, "I'm going to feed that people wormwood and make them drink bitter draught or bitter waters." Right. So that's what it looks like. Now there's a bit of a problem here, because the reconstruction I have has, "I will make that people um, eat wormwood," right to the end of this line. So I would expect the text, the next word to be, "and I've made them drink," in the following line. And these are the traces that I have over here. You can see my cursor. I will just
Yeah.
zoom in on that section here. So you can see these traces here are supposed to, this is the way Tove wants to reconstruct this
Oh, that
with
doesn't work
this
at all.
word. It sure doesn't look like it works. And right away when I looked at that, I'm like, that no. I just you can't do that. So I actually decided, no, that's not the word we translate as "I will make them drink." It's actually the word we translate as "bitter waters." So the problem
Oh.
here now is, when we fix the reconstruction, we've got this word, v'hashkitin. What's the problem here? Pay attention to this line. What's the problem with this word here now?
It extends beyond the page.
Yeah. So it can't be this, right? because
Oh.
the scribe would not have finish with la ana. He knows what's coming next. He knows he has to write vahashkitim. He's not going to continue to write this word here. He would have moved it to the next line if indeed this is what this looked like. And I don't think it was. What I think happened was, now, importantly, there is a textual variant in this section, according to the Septuagint. The Septuagint doesn't read, I made this people eat wormwood. It just says, I made them eat wormwood. So when I fix it to follow the Septuagint, all of a sudden, everything fits. Ta-da! So
Holy
even
shit.
though I don't have the text there, using my knowledge of the script, I'm able to make a really strong educated guess as to what was missing and what couldn't possibly be there. Pretty cool, eh?
Wow. Yeah. Dude. So,
all right. So I've got, no, go ahead. And then I've got one more.
No, I'm still processing. So it's not. Yeah. Okay. Keep going. I think I know what you're getting at next, and I'm into it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So now, this is I think the most significant issue with this particular text, and it's in the previous verse, which is Jeremiah 9 verse 13. So when Tov reconstructed this text, he reconstructed it to read like this. He followed the Masoretic text, which is what he just defaults to when he's doing this kind of work, right? So the Masoretic text here reads, and Yahweh says, because they have forsaken my law that I set before them and have not obeyed my voice or walked in accordance with it, but they have stubbornly followed their own hearts and have gone after the Baalim or the Baals as their ancestors taught them. So this is what I've reconstructed here, where you see my cursor. They did not walk in them, and they went after the wickedness of their hearts here, and then that's what this is. Va'achere habaalim, and after the Baals. Now, right away, I'm going, no way. Because again,
it extends beyond the page.
It's over the line, right? But more than that, look, there's actually part of this fragment that's left here. We should be able to see some of this.
Yeah.
If it was there. And it's not, right? So, what is going on here? Well, the Septuagint kind of helps us, but not really, because it preserves an even longer form of the phrase. It says, they have stubbornly followed after their own evil hearts and have gone after the Baalim. Oh. So it's probably not all that. However, I think the Septuagint actually helps us. Tov recognized the problem, to his credit, and he actually said, did I have his quote here? Yeah. So he, nope, I didn't copy it. But in the addition, he actually says, you know what? It seems like this could possibly be too long for the space. So maybe they just left out the preposition va'achere and said they followed after the wickedness of their own hearts and the Baalim, which would look like that. That works, right? And that's acceptable. But I don't actually think that's what's going on, and I'll explain why. So, this phrase, they have gone...
real quick, in the chat, Jackie and Riley, I'm pretty sure this is the nation of Israel. Like, God is condemning his people for not abiding by his statutes, which, we see over and over again.
Yeah. I think Jackie's onto something very, very important. about what's happening in this manuscript, and we're going to get to that, okay? Because this is super exciting.
Oh, Jackie
All
gets
right.
an A.
Yeah, Jackie gets an A. So I got to pull my notes back up here. Sorry. So importantly, this same formula, they have gone after the wickedness of their own hearts, is a common phrase throughout Jeremiah. It occurs 6 times elsewhere in Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 17, 7 verse 24, 11 verse 8, 16 12, 18 12, 23 17. But importantly, all of those are without the addition of the Baals, the Baalim. It's just they've gone after the wickedness of their own heart.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And five of those include their evil heart. So based on everything else that's going on in the book of Jeremiah, I think the same thing is happening here. I think this probably originally read, they went after the inclinations of their evil heart, and there was no after the Baalim at all. So here's what's going on. In the Septuagint, you have this. You have they have stubbornly followed after their own evil hearts and have gone after the Baalim. The Masoretic text has a slightly altered version of this. They have stubbornly followed after their own hearts and have gone after the Baalim. I think 4Q Jeremiah A preserves the oldest form of this particular text, and it just read, they have stubbornly followed after their own hearts.
Yeah.
Now, here's my big takeaway from this, okay? And I'm going to actually just read a concluding section from a presentation that I gave at SBL in 2014 about this manuscript. So my alternative reconstruction of this particular fragment is translated as follows. Who is the intelligent person? Let him also understand this, and him to whom a word of the mouth of Yahweh has come. Let him declare it. For what reason did the land perish? Like a wilderness, to the point that nothing passes through it? And Yahweh said, because they forsook my law that I gave before them, they also have not obeyed my voice or walked in accordance with it. You have gone after what pleases their own evil heart, which their fathers taught them. Therefore, this is what Yahweh Tsabaoth, Yahweh of armies, the God of Israel says, behold, I will feed them anguish, and I will give them water and gall to drink. I will scatter them among the nations whom they and their ancestors did not know, and I will send the dagger upon them until I have consumed them. Now, that translation is based on the New English translation of the Septuagint. I've made some slight modifications to it. Now, this is where I continue in my paper. I say, 4Q Jeremiah A, this manuscript, distinguishes itself as a manuscript with an exceptional amount of secondary scribal activity. Emmanuel Tove himself observes, and this is a quote from Professor Tove, no other Qumran text has as many corrections relative to the length of the document. Column 9, lines 7 through 9 contain as many as 8 corrections, erasures, or superlinear additions or combinations of them. An obvious explanation for the large number of corrections would be that the scribe of this document was simply more prone to error than others. Another explanation would be the assumption that the base text of the scroll was corrected more than other scrolls. A possible reason for such an assumed procedure of correction is the adaptation of the text to another text tradition, such as the Masoretic text. So that's Tove's quote. And here is where I continue. The presence of textual variations that I just pointed out in this small section of Jeremiah 9:11 to 15 raises suspicions about the nature of this manuscript as an adapted text, although I would qualify Tove's broader interpretation of this activity as a corrective procedure. I don't think it's corrective. This would presume that either the base text of this manuscript or its representation of it was in the first place defective. That is not to say that there are not a very high number of clear corrections to errors in 4Q Jeremiah A. There are. We have several places in this manuscript where clear errors have been corrected. Rather, should the various types of numerous scribal interventions in this manuscript give us pause, the reason to consider that first, there was a functional base text as opposed to a corrupted base text behind some of these incidents. And that second, the range and frequency of this activity potentially reveals elements of the real world, social or religious dialogue at work. So basically what I'm suggesting is that when scribes make changes like this to manuscript, they are to address what's really going on in their world, in their environment. So here I continue. What might this mean for the proposed reconstruction of Jeremiah 9:11-15? The two most significant and interesting differences between my alternative readings of the text in both the Septuagint and Masoretic Jeremiah appear in the shorter readings of verses 13 to 14. The longer text in the extant editions attests to the insistence of a specific cultic infraction in verse 13 to distinguish the people's sin from the more general sense of religious error, from going after one's own evil desires. This is supplemented by the text in the Masoretic form of Jeremiah 9:14, which provides another specification to a subtly more general oracle by particularizing that this people, that is, those who have gone after the Baalim, have been singled out for the ensuing judgment. Where these elements are absent in 4Q Jeremiah A, this Deuteronomistic oracle addresses a more broadly conceived audience. What is especially interesting is that the cultic specification that appears in the longer text of Masoretic Jeremiah 9-11, but that is absent from this particular manuscript, possibly reflects what has happened in the previous column. You remember the long insertion of Jeremiah 7:30 to 8:3? It's a Deuteronomistic oracle that specifies cultic sins and their punishment amid a series of laments and divine threats in response to more broadly conceived sins. So the text in 4Q Jeremiah A was once addressed to a more general audience. No one repents of wickedness, saying, "What have I done?" All of them turn to their own course, like a horse plunging headlong into battle. So that's Jeremiah 8, chapter 6. 8, verse 6. At a possibly much later point in time, the same text was adjusted with a clarification to this invective. The people of Judah have done evil in my sight, says Yahweh. They are the ones who have set their abominations in the house that is called by my name, defiling it. And they go on building the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the sons of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it come to my mind. So do you see what I'm getting at here with this manuscript?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think this just to make this abundantly clear here, right? I think this manuscript preserves some really important information that helps us to understand what's happening in the Masoretic text, which is the version that all of our English Bibles were translated from. So by the time you get to the Masoretic text, somebody has made substantial changes to the book of Jeremiah to really particularize the nature of the sins of the people and the identification of the people who are sinning. Vishanti is right on point here. Big Deuteronomist energy. And I think it's not necessarily always native to Jeremiah. I think this is stuff that got introduced at later periods of time. And now we have ta-da, a manuscript, which shows us how some of this happened.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd have to check my work, but I don't think like Baal is not mentioned very much in Jeremiah compared to like Deuteronomy or Daniel or Ezekiel, right? Like Baal's not in Jeremiah very much. So it makes
No, not
sense
very
that
much at all.
so
Now,
yeah, the idea that this was added later is like makes sense. I can see that for sure.
now another question we have to ask, and this is at least is at least as equally an interesting question, maybe even more so, is when. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because if this is something, I mean, we have this manuscript. Remember, I said dates back to at the very earliest, let's say 225 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that happened in the Antiochian reforms, or sorry, in the Antiochian crisis. This is when Antiochus came into he introduced his
Yep.
very aggressive program of Hellenization for the Jews.
Yeah. Which
One of
is
the things that he
attributed to Daniel or in attributed to King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 5, 6, was it?
yeah
9.
yeah
Anyway. Yeah, sorry,
exactly.
go ahead.
So, but so one of the things that Antiochus actually did, we know this from various reports of historians, is he introduced the worship of Baal Samim to the Jerusalem temple.
But
Now,
wasn't it the moon god? Or
I
what am I
have to go
thinking
back
of?
and look. I believe
Or some
so, but I
some
I
sort
have to
of
go back and look. But if that
yeah, sorry.
if this is something that happened in the Hasmonean period, that would help to explain why you have these strong Deuteronomistic this strong Deuteronomistic language added to this text with a specific focus on the Baalim.
Yeah, that'd be like the missing
Oh,
piece of the
and
puzzle.
yeah, and
It's all
remember
connected,
this
man.
manuscript. Yeah, this manuscript, remember, predates Antiochus, which is
Yeah.
why we don't have it in. This is why we don't have the specification that I mentioned in there. One of the other interesting things about this manuscript, and
Crazy.
I don't know what to do about this, but this passage in the long insertion that you read from Jeremiah 7:30 through 8:3 contains one of those big child sacrifice sections, one of those
Yeah. That's another
strong
thing I noticed.
um, and you'll notice what Yahweh actually says in there. He says, you know, they're burning their sons in the valley
And
of
daughter.
Tophet and daughters. But then he goes on to say, this is something I never wanted. I never commanded this. Like, what a
Yeah.
weird thing to say. You know, if it's one of those thou dost protest too much sort of
There you go.
moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Yeah.
want this. What are you
You
guys
you
doing?
didn't have problem with human sacrifice any other time. Why?
So, but if this is like and I don't and this is where I don't know what to do with this. If this is something if this is huge chunk, this oracle um doesn't appear in this manuscript until 125 BCE.
That's really
I don't
interesting because
know,
it's
man. Like
that's
what was going on?
a much older idea that's introduced much earlier, or a much later idea that's introduced
Now,
earlier than you'd expect it to.
one of the
Um,
things, now I think something that we do see happening with a lot of the biblical literature is that they will the biblical writers are not shy about just attaching grievous, what they consider to be grievous sins and abhorrent actions to their opponents or people that they wanted to denigrate, whether they were actually doing this stuff or
yeah.
not, right? But it's pretty sharp. The fact that this comes out and potentially comes out when it does raises some questions.
Yeah.
All right.
Like they might
So
be reaching back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of like how pastors today
That's all I
will
got.
cite sinners in the hands of an angry God in their sermons.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's all I got. Okay. I hope that was fun.
That was plenty.
Did everybody have fun?
Yeah. Did you guys have fun, chat? I'm sorry, I haven't been interacting with you guys a whole lot. I'm trying to. Then just take some money to redeem. Yep. Yep. Just pay your tithes and you'll be fine. Yeah, man, this is more than like I already knew the stream was going to be fun, but this was even more than I expected because like I watch you go on other shows, and so I was expecting to see a lot of the things that I've already seen. You've been on my show several times before, so I was expecting to see some like repeat information, but this was like all new shit.
Well, I
don't think I've ever seen before.
I'm not sure if I've presented this on YouTube before. Now this is all stuff that I worked on this particular manuscript, and I started actually putting together my own special edition of it. I've written like 100 pages about 4Q Jeremiah A. I've only published bits of it in the forms of articles, but there's a lot of stuff going on here. One of the questions that I haven't satisfactorily answered about this particular manuscript was its total size. I still consider an open question. When Tove did his edition on 4Q Jeremiah A, he just assumed that this was probably a complete copy of the book of Jeremiah. Of course, there are dramatic differences between the Septuagint version of Jeremiah and the Masoretic version of Jeremiah. So which one is it? We don't really know. However, one of the interesting things is that all the fragments of this particular manuscript come between chapter 7 and chapter 20. It's either chapter 27 or 20. I think it's chapter 27. So that's the only surviving material we have. So do we how much bigger do we assume it was? Was this a complete copy of the book of Jeremiah all the way through to the end? Whether that's
there's no way
chapter.
Of knowing.
Well, there's things that we can do to make some educated guesses, sure. And I started working on this. One of the things that that we do is we look at the shapes of individual fragments, and you can judge based on the shapes and the amount of surviving material in a particular fragment, basically how big it was inside the roll, and then you can use that to calculate how big the whole roll was, right? It's been more difficult. Yeah. It's been more difficult with a manuscript like this, but it's something I had started working on, but never got around to finishing. So hopefully, one day that's a project that I can pick up again. But really, go ahead. Go. No, you go.
There's A.B. Lovecraft had a really interesting question in the chat. Is paleography done on all writing, including clay tablets, or just manuscripts? Like maybe Dr. Josh. This might be more Dr. Josh's territory, but
in terms of, I think all scholars who work with ancient manuscripts and inscriptions do paleography. Now, I don't work in the Akkadian material, so I don't know what that looks like or how much variation. I would expect that there's probably not nearly as much variation with the clay tablets, just by nature of the fact that the cuneiform symbols are all just combinations of wedges, right?
Yeah, like
So
triangles.
there's only so much you can do with a wedge, um, where where it becomes, when you're writing with a stylus and you're using an alphabet, that's where you see a lot of them. I'm assuming here, I don't know, but I would guess that's where you see a lot more pronounced change over time. But certainly paleographers work with Greek manuscripts. In fact, Greek paleography developed before Hebrew paleography, just by virtue of the availability of the material. There was, we have so much more ancient Greek manuscripts than we do ancient Hebrew manuscripts. The pioneer of what's called Jewish paleography, which is the square Aramaic script that was used in the Second Temple period. The pioneer, his name is Frank Moore-Cross. He passed away 10 or 15 years ago, I think now. But his work was picked up by I've mentioned her already, Ada Yardeni. Did some tremendous work on the Jewish paleography. Another one of my colleagues, Michael Langlois at the University of Strasbourg, is also a very good paleographer. So, but we do the same thing, and we do the same thing within. Pardon?
So would he be open to doing a podcast?
Oh, probably. He probably would be open to it.
Really? No, half joking, but if you're serious, then
no, he'd probably be open to it. We could talk a little bit about that afterwards. But I was going to say, we do the same things with inscriptions too. Like not all texts are, pen on paper. We have inscriptions from like memorial stones and stelae, and there's actually a pretty impressive looking. If you ever go to Israel, it's either I believe it's at the Israel Museum. It was taken from the Temple Mount, but there's actually a chunk of stone that was that they're almost 100% certain was part of the that would be the southwest corner of the temple, where priests would blow the shofarim. There's actually an inscription on the wall.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's text that's taken from, I believe it's Leviticus, but yeah, it's inscribed, chiseled right into the stone, and it's a beautiful, very high quality, professional what I would call a Herodian script, a script that we assigned to the time of Herod the Great. But yeah, so it's inscribed, chiseled into the stone, but based on the script type, we can date it roughly. So yeah. And actually the inscriptions are most helpful actually for I guess refining our dating for a lot of this stuff, because that stuff is more reliably dated, because you pull this stuff out of the dirt, right? You pull it out of excavation layers.
Preserved. Hasn't been fucked with so much as like papyri scroll. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Can you
wrap things up there?
All right, man.
No, you did. Was there
Sounds
something
good.
else you wanted to?
Oh, I was looking here at something Jason Rollins said. Seems to me this might
This one?
fit Gomurkin's hypothesis. Septuagint translated into 70s with Deuteronomy created at that time, and the editors changed the text they received, then it filtered back out. Yeah, I'd have to think about that,
That's a
especially when it comes to some of the Torah material. I don't know how much this reflects on the invention of the book of Deuteronomy. Now, I think I would say I think we're on firmer footing by suggesting, the book of Deuteronomy as we have it coming from the Hellenistic period. But I definitely think that there's stuff in the book of Deuteronomy. I'm particular. The Song of Moses. I'm convinced is very ancient. And I think
yeah.
it unquestionably dates back to before the destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. I think it pretty
Yeah,
squarely
I
dates
agree with that.
to Josiah.
Mhm.
So, but my thought is that Deuteronomy was expensive, right? And that layers were added over time. And the book of Deuteronomy is something that you could potentially date to a final form quite a bit later. So maybe that works. I don't know.
Oh man. Well, we could go on for a few more hours about Deuteronomy by itself.
We probably could, but we've
Just,
been going for 2.
oh man. But this has been awesome, man.
This has been
Thank you
fun.
so much for coming on.
I've had a
I learned
blast
a lot.
as
A lot of things
usual.
I'm gonna have to chew on for a while because that was
All right.
that was some heavy stuff you laid on us tonight.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot there, guys. Sorry about that. And like I said, if you have been listening, it pays to actually watch. So, oh wow, thanks, Metal Theologian.
hmm.
So excellent,
Which Mel
and
Theologian's
thank
been
you,
with us
Jason.
this whole time, so thank you.
Wow, wild.
Um,
Uh,
so yeah, thanks guys. Hope you all enjoyed that. Dr. Kipp, you should definitely make some content about this stuff. I think it would be well received. But thanks you guys for watching the stream, for hanging out with us all this time. Stay tuned. Um, sometime in March, I'm going to be having Canada Moss come on to talk about her new
Again.
book.
Oh wait, didn't
Yeah,
you? She
well,
was just on like last week, wasn't she?
yeah, but we
Or was it
talked
2 weeks
about
ago?
her last week. We talked about her book, The Myth of Persecution.
Oh,
Next
okay.
month, we're going to be talking about her new book, God's Ghostwriters, which
Awesome.
is going to be coming out at the end of March. And I'm not even halfway through it yet, but it's fantastic. Anyway,
Awesome.
so stick around. I got more things planned, and like, subscribe, all the good stuff, because I'm terrible about remembering to say that. And thanks again for joining. We'll see y'all next time.